What's up, XRP family? Thank you guys for joining the video for today. Let's dig in, guys. We have some interesting stuff going on here. Ripple, FAM 2018, Mark Carney, former BOC on DLT. Now, I want to show you this, guys, because nothing has changed, okay? This is 2018, but nothing has changed. The Bank of England just announced that they are working with Ripple. They have a paper which they announce their consulting partner, which is Ripple, right? So there are many things now that actually prove that they want to use DLT. Now listen carefully to what she's saying, because the SEC also decided that staking in the US will be forbidden. So this is a major hit for people there, because of course staking offers many opportunities, right? Especially if you have a large amount of capital, you can use it while you actually do nothing and make money, right? Even now, there are people using Ethereum staking and all that stuff and making serious money with this. And now that it's forbidden in America, guys, it's a big hit, right? So you can see that regulation is changing the whole game right now. And this is not going to stop, guys. This is going to get worse. Now, maybe you think it's just going to be in the US, but this is not going to be just in the US, guys. They are preparing us for a bigger regulation that is coming, right? They're not gonna let people just do what they want, because that's not in their agenda, and we have to think about that. Now let's take a look at this video.
Have done their speeches about Bitcoin over the last few years. There's been a kind of standard conclusion, which is, don't look necessarily at Bitcoin, but the distributed ledger technology, that is interesting. That's something we're looking at. You said you've pursued it a bit, you're not sure it's ready yet. Is that one of those things that we sort of exaggerate the importance in the short run and then really miss the importance in the long run, that it's just going to be a 10, 20-year thing that transforms the financial system?
I think that you have to keep open that possibility without question. And so part of what I was saying there, and part of our attitude, is always think about the end user. Think about the person in the pub or the business managing their supply chain. What are they trying to get from this new technology, or what problem is it trying to solve? How can the existing system adapt, even radically adapt, in order to provide it? In parallel, be all over the technology and expect that it's going to.
Now listen carefully how he is saying, how is the old system going to use the new technology? He's not saying replace, which is very key, because there's still many people that think that Ripple will replace Swift or replace the banks. This is never going to happen, guys. This is not going to happen. Just forget about it. It's not going to replace anything. It's going to make something more efficient. It's going to complete what we already have, okay? You have to understand this, because it's an important point. People still think that Ripple is the answer to everything, and that yes, it delivers and it solves a major problem, but you cannot think and be so naive that it will replace everything. It's not possible, guys. We are dealing with bankers, the richest people in the world. They're not just going to sit there and let this company take over everything. That's not how this is going to happen. It's impossible. But he's saying how they are going to use it. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing companies, institutions, and even banks, and even the whole world is adapting and trying to use this technology, but it's not going to replace everything.
Innovate, particularly if it's brought into the regulatory net, because the standards all of a sudden go way up and it has to innovate, and be aware that it can be moved. Now,
10 years, 20 years, it could be.
It's tough to say. It's also possible that it won't achieve that level. And I think one of the things that I would distinguish between the currencies, and this isn't universally true, I obviously won't name individual ones, but most currencies don't actually, there's nothing proprietary about the underlying, the technology will move beyond them. So if you own the currency, you don't really own the underlying application, if you follow. So you don't even have the option value on the technology, as you would if you owned a company.
Now, very clear what he's saying, right? And he mentioned regulation as well, which we really are dealing with right now. Ripple powering the next evolution of central bank digital currencies. Nice mention, Jay spent the bits. in the Futurum research with Spendabits winning the interoperability category in the Ripple CBDC Innovate Hackathon. Now, this is very interesting, guys. These are all companies that came together and actually were building on the XRP ledger, and Spendabits is winning. So very interesting, right? How you can, with Spendabits, you can send money in fiat all over the world using XRP. They use XRP technology. Very good. SEC postponed announcing their defeat until next week. Now, they had something for actually today or yesterday, but they have postponed this Sunshine Act notice, which you can see, which is February 16, which they are going to mention something. And it's going to be very interesting what they're going to mention as we get very close to a verdict. Fam, 2014-2015 Watford Institute, this is a paper about continuous assessment Ripple protocol, where they actually look at the possibilities that Ripple is providing. Now, I think this is a very interesting paper, right? Where you can clearly see how they come to a conclusion that Ripple can completely replace Swift and all these things. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about. This is something that is not going to happen, guys. Don't let papers like this, for example, change your mind, because it will not happen. It will complete what we already have. Again, it will not replace, right? Because this is just simply not possible, guys. If you understand economics, if you understand the world that we live in very well, you will know that it's impossible for Ripple to replace everything, right? It's not going to happen. Regulatory purgatory strategy hurts every Americans the most, leaving them in the dust while these opportunities are accessible offshore. Now, here we go, right? Now, I don't think, guys, that it will stay like this. I think that major things will happen this year due to regulation, and also in other countries, especially with all the things that are happening, right? The FTX problem and all that stuff. That is all done on purpose to actually kick in those regulations. What does a Ripple win look like? Let's take a look at what Johnny Deaton is saying here.
Possibly responding or trying to launch a counter at that time? Is the case over, or what's our next step or next risk?
All right, well, let's look at possible outcomes, right? So let's take the first outcome possible is that the SEC gets an outright win. I know you want to start it with a positive, but that's the first negative result, right? Yeah. And then a second option is that Ripple gets a flat out victory. And then, of course, there's a third option where there's a partial summary judgment granted in part and denied in part, and that could be a split. And then finally, there's a fourth outcome that it's a split, but also a jury trial could necessarily be needed for certain issues. The only two issues that I foresee a jury trial where the judge could say this particular issue needs to be decided by a jury is if we get to the fair notice defense, right? Ripple even said in their papers, Paul, that the fair notice defense, whether or not Ripple received adequate and fair notice, that's a jury question for the jury to decide. Now, hopefully the judge doesn't get that far, right? Because hopefully she never rules on fair notice defense because it's an outright victory. So back to your question, though. Let's say there's either an outright Ripple win, or the judge says that Ripple offered an unregistered security in 2013, 2014, and fines them for that, but that today ongoing and future sales of XRP are not considered securities. Either one of those are a great victory. And so then the question is, what would the SEC appeal the decision? Would they then want to go to the Second Circuit? And I don't think they would. Right. The interesting question, the most interesting question about all this, Paul, is what you're getting at, which is, okay, John, what happens on the ground? If Ripple wins, or they're held to only violate the law in some very early years, some very beginning sales, but today's XRPs and future XRP sales are not securities, what happens? Well, you would see some price appreciation, one would expect. And whether or not Coinbase, Crypto.com, Kraken, Binance US,
get the relist.
The question is, what do they do? Do they relist? If the SEC doesn't appeal the decision, then the law of the land is Judge Torres, and you would think that they would relist, right? Especially in today's environment where you have the SEC and Gary Gensler saying, oh, there's so many tokens or securities. If you've got clarity on XRP and there is no appeal, and Judge Torres' decision that XRP is not a security, if that's the law of the land, then of course you would expect those exchanges with that kind of clarity to relist XRP. And so that's the good news, I think.
Very, very interesting, guys, because we may see this happening soon where all these exchanges start relisting XRP because it's not considered security from here on forward. So very exciting, guys. We will wait and see what will happen. Thank you very much for watching the video, guys. See you in the next one. Cheers.